coming up on this episode of the Roundtable.
This is the prosecutorial team around the Hunter case. This is from the court filing. In and around August 2021, discussions were ongoing within the prosecution team, that is the team prosecuting Hunter, on the Hunter Biden investigation concerning witnesses who needed to be interviewed in furtherance of the investigation. During a recurring prosecution team conference call in or around late August 2021, AUSA, that is Assistant United States Attorney Leslie Wolf, told the team that she and DOJ tax attorney Jack Morgan had recently returned from the Central Intelligence Agency headquarters in Langley, Virginia, where they had been summoned to discuss Kevin Morris. This is the sugar daddy bankrolling Hunter's legal defense. AUSA Wolf stated that they were provided a classified briefing in relation to Mr. Morris, and as a result, we could no longer pursue him as a witness. Investigators probed AUSA Wolf, but since her briefing was classified and she was apparently sanitizing it to an unclassified form to share over an open phone line, she did not elaborate with more information. She reiterated more than once that they were summoned to the CIA in Langley concerning Mr. Morris, and that because of the information provided there, he could not be a witness for the investigation. Conspiracy machine go burr after you drop something like that. I mean, it's just have fun speculating.
I mean, that's not even a conspiracy. They're just
what exactly?
Saying, this guy is an asset. Yeah. This guy works for the CIA. You can't talk to him.
So, if you follow the bouncing ball and you're conspiratorially minded, is the CIA paying for Hunter Biden's legal defense?
Oh my God.
Probably not, but there's some weird stuff going on here.
Welcome once again to the Roundtable, your weekly publishers and editors podcast here at the American Mind. I am your host for today, Seth Barron, managing editor of the American Mind. I'm joined today by publisher and president of the Claremont Institute, Ryan Williams, editor of the American Mind, James Poulos, and Spencer Clavin, special editor of the American Mind and associate editor of the Claremont Review of Books. Well, Donald Trump's trial here in New York has concluded, except for closing arguments. Former bagman and would-be United States Attorney General Michael Cohen revealed that he had stolen $60,000 from the Trump Organization. But our friends in the media explained that it was only because he felt that he deserved it. MSNBC's Lawrence O'Donnell explained, when Cohen was asked about that on redirect by the prosecution, it didn't really sound like stealing $30,000. It sounded a lot like Michael Cohen doing the little that could, within that calculation, to rebalance the bonus he thought he deserved. And it still came out as less than the bonus he thought he deserved, and the bonus he had gotten the year before, O'Donnell added. Well, many people who steal money tell themselves they are simply balancing the scales of justice. It's not as unique a defense as Lawrence O'Donnell thinks. At the same time, Hunter Biden is preparing to go on trial in California in his weapons case, and evidently his ex-wives or ex-wife and girlfriends will be testifying for the prosecution about his drug and other habits. He is also facing a tax evasion charge. Hunter Biden has tried to delay his trial, saying he needs more time to prepare a defense, but the judge evidently said, these aren't very complex cases. Indeed, they seem rather cut and dried. Anyway, these trials, however they turn out, will likely have an impact on the election. What does everybody think?
Well, I'm hoping that there's at least one skeptical, rational juror on the Trump jury. I was perusing the judge's jury instructions, and the judge was not doing many favors to Trump's defense. I mean, they wanted the jury to try to state the underlying crime, and the judge was excluding that requirement. So the judge seems to have had his thumb somewhat on the scales against Trump the whole time, and it was just confirmed in the jury instructions. So I worry about that case. And I worry not as a partisan, but as a partisan of sort of some decent semblance of an impartial judicial system and prosecutorial system, because as we've discussed before, the case is to say it's flimsy is an insult to flimsy things. I mean, the whole thing is just a travesty, frankly. We don't need to rehash all the reasons why. I'll point people to really three friends or fellow travelers of the Claremont Institute's project in their different ways, but they're a diverse crew: Jonathan Turley, Andy McCarthy, and Byron York. I mean, if you read the three of them, you get the journalist's take and the two lawyers' take. One lawyer, former prosecutor himself, and Andy McCarthy, sort of not a huge fan of Trump, but even he just can't believe these proceedings. So, and then Cohen's just icing on the cake. I mean, you kind of read some of the summaries in the transcript, and it's like, Mr. Cohen, so you're saying you would lie to save your own skin? Yes, that's correct. That kind of thing. And you say you stole from the Trump organization? Yes. And as Seth pointed out, like all thieves, he justified it. It really wasn't. It's not thievery when you steal from the company till to make up what they haven't given you, but what you're owed. No, that's not thievery. That's just cosmic justice. So I don't know. I mean, in a way, it's a perfect Trump story. I mean, corrupt New York court, liars and crooks taking the stand, a judge who is cheating him in some way or another and has gagged him from commenting on witnesses. I mean, the whole thing is, if it wasn't such a threat to the decent rule of law, we could just sit back and marvel at it. But unfortunately, the stakes are higher.
So I just want to revisit my personal fascination because, yeah, we can sit here and repeat again and again why this is an absurd litigation and kind of embarrassing for the country. And I definitely think the embarrassment continues to grow. I am just sort of obsessed by these polls about how people would react if Trump were convicted, because I have a genuine prediction that the polls are completely wrong. And I have no evidence for this except now several years of watching Trump sort of bounce back from what was supposed to be destruction. And so I'm looking at like ABC News, and they've got this result that 1/5 of Trump supporters would reconsider their support or withdraw it. That 16% would reconsider, 4% would withdraw if he's convicted of a felony. Then independents at Politico, 36% say they would be less likely to support Trump. 34% of Republicans said they would be more likely to support Trump if he's convicted in this Manhattan case. I just think in real life, and not in the abstracted sort of vague word of the scary felony word that they throw around in these polls, I cannot imagine that this is a net bad for Trump if he is persecuted in exactly the way he's always saying he's being persecuted. Like, you can make a case that his 2020 thing is sort of over the top and irresponsible, and he's become obsessed with it. And there was a time when like that was sort of a count against him. Now, as always, it's like the deep state has risen to meet exactly his hyperbolic description. And this just sounds like exactly the sort of thing that Donald Trump thrives on. So this is my continuous prediction. It could be wrong, but I think if they convict him here, it's going to be politically good for him, although terrible for the country.
Yeah, to me, this is like the quintessence of this weird paradox where at the same time that the regime has burst all of its bounds of norms and of constitutional decency, and it's just sort of rampaging across the land and treading upon citizens and rights and institutions with seeming impunity. It's also like this pathetic caricature of a tyranny, and it's being run by like corrupt, bumbling, incompetent people. And, and that's not even to talk about like the established, state affiliated media as it is referred to now on X. I had the misfortune of walking past a television the other day that had CNN on it. And they're just, Anderson Cooper and the rest of the crew just reporting like blow by blow, the latest in the Trump trial saga. And they're treating it with the utmost seriousness as if this is just, the very most important thing that there is to talk about before the audience of the American people. And the disconnect that I experienced was just so profound. And, I don't think it's like the more that you love Trump, the more of a disconnect with the media presentation of this affair. That may be the case for some people, but I think it's just, if you're out there like living your life, CNN is decreasingly relevant. And the only times most people see it probably are just like in the airport or in like a bar. It's just kind of, it's there, just sort of like on the TV, like a screensaver. And it just doesn't compute. It doesn't give off the vibe of being the case of the century, the trial of the century, something so, dramatic and important that you really have to tune in. You got to know what's happening because, our future hangs on the outcome of this trial. It just doesn't feel that way at all. And, obviously the perversion of justice is significant. It's enough to make someone who even dislikes Trump personally and politically still sort of look at this and go, this is a monstrosity. Yet at the same time, just the trivia of it, the pantomime of it is really staggering. And I think, caught in the crosshairs, in the crossfire of that paradox, many Americans are probably just quietly harboring a feeling of this is fake. If Trump goes to jail in some way, that's also going to be fake. It doesn't actually change anything. The system has been perverted to a point where it is unworthy of public respect. That, if that were to actually happen, that's when things could get scary because the crew in charge here seems not to really take seriously the prospect that that the American people are simply going to lose the basic respect that institutions need to be legitimate.
I'm still kind of fascinated by the fact that Hunter Biden's actually going to go on trial. I mean, in 2020, there was a massive effort within government, within the intelligence community, among all the major media to completely censor the Hunter Biden laptop story. It was buried. They said this is a Russian op. And then they were going to bury it again in the Delaware courts with the special counsel. It turned out that they were going to charge him with the most minor things and just dismiss everything else. But then, that deal fell apart. I guess there was a judge who was like, this doesn't make any sense. And so now he's actually going to trial. And the thing is, it's true. These are not complicated cases. These are the sort of bread and butter cases that the DOJ handles all the time. Tax evasion. Like you can't steal, you can't not pay $1 million in taxes. And buying a gun when you're like a confessed and flagrant drug addict. Like apparently his wife said that in the period when he attested that he was not using drugs, his ex-wife went through the car like frequently because she didn't want the kids to be riding around in a car full of drugs. And 15 times or so, she had to throw out a bunch of drugs she found. So it's pretty interesting that the regime is permitting this to happen, or maybe the regime isn't all powerful.
I mean, I would suggest that that's the right option. I don't think that this this sort of merry gang of klutzes that we're seeing play out this Trump trial is giving the impression of having the sort of SEAL Team 6 coordination that it would take to run every aspect of American life. There's so much incompetence on display in front of the curtain. I have a hard time imagining that there's no panic or chaos going on behind the curtain. Like this whole act of pay no attention to the kids rioting on campus. You know, we'll throw them a bone. We'll pause weapon shipments to Israel, and we'll just get over this finish line. I mean, what James is saying gives me the impression, and this is something that I've sort of felt for some time, that we're kind of play acting cataclysms and catastrophes as a way of avoiding facing up to our actual deep structural catastrophe, sort of rolling catastrophes. And that this whole election almost has that shape, that you were rehashing this ancient now feud between two old men that we talk about as if it were a nation-ending dispute on both sides, and yet everybody involved kind of knows that no outcome here is really going to decide our most major issues, and that those issues are the ones we're actually trying to sort of tamp down and keep behind the scenes. And one of those is like the collapse of the Democratic Party, which I think they just don't have anybody other than Biden to sort of paper over that, hopefully until 2024, and they can get 4 more years of power and then deal with it later. But yeah, I do think that there is still, despite the advanced stage of chaos, like there's still a fight going on over whether the deep state runs everything or not.
I just also, 2 things. I think, Spencer, you said that if Trump gets convicted, it plays well for him politically. I don't know about that, because as Seth said, I mean, he could very well go to jail. I just don't think that's going to be good for Trump heading into a presidential election. But we'll see. I mean, there's been discussion. I mean, he's facing, if all the charges are and all of the sentencing recommendations are carried out, 134 years in jail for all this. I mean, it would be shocking if anything remotely like that happened. But I think a conviction is going to be a problem on a couple of fronts. And I just want to drop in, for the record, this that broke today from this whistleblower disclosure court filing. So Kevin Morris is this entertainment lawyer who's been funding a lot of Hunter's legal defenses, and Politico ran a story about a week ago saying, he's kind of tapped out. He's spent millions of dollars for Hunter's defense. And then this crops up. This is the prosecutorial team around the Hunter case. This is from the court filing. In and around August 2021, discussions were ongoing within the prosecution team, that is the team prosecuting Hunter, on the Hunter Biden investigation concerning witnesses who needed to be interviewed in furtherance of the investigation. During a recurring prosecution team conference call in or around late August 2021, AUSA, that is Assistant United States Attorney Leslie Wolf, told the team that she and DOJ tax attorney Jack Morgan had recently returned from the Central Intelligence Agency headquarters in Langley, Virginia, where they had been summoned to discuss Kevin Morris. This is the sugar daddy bankrolling Hunter's legal defense. AUSA Wolf stated that they were provided a classified briefing in relation to Mr. Morris, and as a result, we could no longer pursue him as a witness. Investigators probed AUSA Wolf, but since her briefing was classified and she was apparently sanitizing it to an unclassified form to share over an open phone line, she did not elaborate with more information. She reiterated more than once that they were summoned to the CIA in Langley concerning Mr. Morris, and that because of the information provided there, he could not be a witness for the investigation. I mean, conspiracy machine go burr after you drop something like that. I mean, it's just have fun speculating.
I mean, that's not even a conspiracy. They're just
what exactly?
Saying, this guy is an asset. Yeah. This guy works for the CIA. You can't talk to him.
So, if you follow the bouncing ball and you're conspiratorially minded, is the CIA paying for Hunter Biden's legal defense?
Oh my God.
Probably not, but there's some weird stuff going on here.
Well, continuing on the theme of panic within the White House or within the Biden campaign, I thought it was interesting this week that we had a new holiday added to the woke liturgical calendar. We had the Transgender Day of Remembrance supplanting Easter. And now we have Mike Brown's birthday. This was weird. All week, we started hearing about I mean, okay, mostly from like, socialists or communist congressmen, but it was all over the place. Mike Brown, Congresswoman Cori Bush, May 20th. Mike Brown should be turning 28 today, but his life was taken by a Ferguson police officer. Jamal Bowman, congressman here in New York, tweeted similar stuff. It seemed kind of odd to think that, Mike Brown was shot and killed 10 years ago. There was a huge investigation into the whole thing under the Obama administration, and the Department of Justice determined, there was really nothing here to follow up. The guy was attacking the officer, and his DNA was found on the gun and in the car, indicating that he'd been reaching into the car. So, so it seems a little strange that all of a sudden, like, we haven't really heard anything about Mike Brown, and all of a sudden, we're seeing pictures of him in his cap and gown again, his high school graduation, and of course, it was the same week that Biden was at Morehouse, telling the graduates that basically that white America wants to murder all of them. So I'm wondering, is this all like, are they kind of hankering for the days when Ferguson was in flames? Are they hoping to get like young Black people like out in the streets again? Or are they just trying to remind them of how bad things can be? It seemed very strange. I don't know if you guys had any thoughts on it. Ryan, I know you were excited to celebrate Mike Brown's birthday.
Yeah. Well, it illustrates, the very practical reason, it seems to me, is they think they might have a Black voter problem of some sorts on their hands. So, find various ways to signal to that voting community that they've got their backs no matter what, I guess, or that the patron-client relationship remains as strong as ever. I can't really explain it other than that. Well, the other way to explain it is just the thoroughly postmodern way we conduct politics now. So, it's all just competing narratives. So the facts and DOJ investigations be damned if you just repeat the original lie that they tried to pass over, and including with some false testimony, as I recall, or some lying from one of the, I don't know if it was a sibling or an acquaintance of Mike Brown, just making up the hands up, don't shoot stuff. I guess we don't really expect much more from Cori Bush. It's kind of a disgrace as a congresswoman in general. So yeah, that's how I interpreted the whole thing. It's kind of the same thing with George Floyd. I guess the big difference, of course, is that however problematic that trial was, poor Derek Chauvin got railroaded along with a couple of his colleagues, and we've written about that at the American Mind. That's the one distinguishing difference between the cases. There's at least a conviction there in some court proceeding, however corrupt it was. But you see the same thing with George Floyd, which is the continuing attempt to, turn him into some sort of saint rather than the obvious conclusion that a lot of us drew, which was that criminal on drugs overdosed in custody. And there was at least a plausible narrative that he wouldn't have expired in custody, but for Derek Chauvin kneeling on him. But, half the country thinks that's suspect as well. So, yeah, we cannot pass up an opportunity to rerun 2020. So in that sense, that's, I guess, the third way. I don't know about Blacks in the streets on these issues, Seth, but more recreate the atmosphere of racial paranoia of 2020 and use it as a get out the vote prod. I think that's what Biden's up to. Mm-hmm. And then just Biden being Biden, he just really can't help himself over the last decade or so, but be a racial demagogue of the first order, including just lying whenever it suits his purposes. So that's what even he lost. Even Bill Maher found it pretty, and not just Bill Maher, but other for lack of a better term, old school liberals of celebrity sorts or whatever, thought the Morehouse speech from Biden was unhelpful.
Yeah, I guess my take on this is, I mean, there have been some people who have been like emotionally inclined toward like the idolatry of Black Americans, and some people who are more inclined to like cash in on participating in the idolatry of Black Americans. I've sort of been over this ground before, where technologies put us in a situation where one thing that human beings know that we can do that the robots can't do is like worship things. And so it's not surprising to see a lot of politics take on this more overtly religious character. And so there are these environmental conditions that are also like pushing more people, obviously primarily on the left, to take the ball of idolatry of Black Americans and run with it. Like we tried tolerance and that wasn't enough. And we moved on to acceptance and that wasn't enough. We moved on to celebration. That was still wasn't like hitting in the way people wanted it to. And now we have the woke liturgical calendar, and we have, this elevation of, whether it's George Floyd or whomever, to this kind of pantheon of these godlike innocence. And they get the murals, and they get the the flowers left at various sites and whatever. I'm sure in some ways it's very flattering, but I also think that like the lesson of history and just kind of spiritual wisdom that's been around for a long time is at the level of the fable, where it's like you think that you want to be treated like a god, you think that you want to be worshipped and idolized and celebrated wherever you go, but after it's like winning the lottery. It's like after a year or maybe a month or even a week or a few days, you discover that it's not all it's cracked up to be. It's actually kind of horrible, and it's just not true. It's not true that any of us walking around is a god, and to be treated that way might be sort of give you a tingly sensation for a little while, but turn sour pretty rapidly because it's a lie. And so when we're tracking kind of the political opinions of Black Americans, and is Trump making inroads or isn't he? And there's a segment of the pundit population that says, no, this will never happen. It's always been kind of vaporware. Republicans are smoking the copium if they think that Donald Trump is going to cause like all the Black dudes and all the Latino dudes to just like vote Trump on election day. I don't know, maybe not. I can see things tilting in a couple different directions. The main issue is, are these demographic subgroups big enough so that even if Trump makes historic inroads into those populations, that it's actually going to matter at the state or nationwide level? I don't know. We'll see. But my hunch is that for a growing number of Black Americans, probably predominantly men for various reasons, that feeling of being elevated into this kind of, cutesy divinity for public worship is increasingly off-putting, and increasingly feels like this kind of, dare I call it the soft bigotry of low expectations.
Yeah, I mean, there's also some pretty grim foreboding associated with what happens in myth and legend and indeed history to people who get elevated to the status of the godhead, right? Like, I don't have any particular knowledge or prediction here, but if you had read your Rene Girard and you were in a position of being kind of lauded as the pure innocent of this group conflict, I feel like you would be getting a bit hot under the collar and setting your watch for the time when that turns, and maybe we're already sort of seeing that kind of anxiety in the intra-group conflict that we're getting on the left of who gets to be in that position, or who even wants to be in that position of most protected class, most elevated minority. I mean, Biden has a Black and Latino vote problem. He also, I think, has like a young white radical vote problem. And it strikes me that this gesture is meant to appeal to that demographic as much as any other. And there it serves a number of functions that are not about offering to put the voter in the position of deity, but intimidating the voter, sort of white liberal class is worried about what will happen if they find themselves on the wrong side of this cataclysmic, cosmic, trial of the different groups. And 2020 was sort of a show of force in that respect. And there's definitely I think a diminishing marginal return, but still a worth for Democrats in the intimidation of what happens if the cities get torn apart again. But then also the appeal for anybody that gets to be in the group that is elevating the sacred entity up to a position of strength and worshiping it, right? You get a sort of virtue and group belonging and all of these things that you do get out of wokeness. You get community, all the stuff they're always talking about, solidarity, community, virtue, all the things that they kind of long for. And I suspect psychologically or theologically, this is an attempt to play the old favorites when the tune has gotten a little bit out of hand. There's a logic of its own to racial tribalism, and it seems to have moved on to we all wear kifyes and break windows. And that's not entirely convenient at the moment for the people who want to ride that tiger into the White House. And so this looks to me like a sort of desperate attempt to rein the tiger back into the old and predictable script of no, it's George Floyd, it's Michael Brown, it's hands up, don't shoot. Because that they sort of know how to manage those dynamics. But again, not to tell everybody to go read I Saw Satan Fall Like Lightning, but there is kind of a pattern to this that doesn't necessarily play into the Democrats' hand, and it might just be working its way to its rather ugly fruition.
Yeah. It's not that Trump has to win a huge percentage of the Black and Latino vote at all. It's just that if they don't go to vote for Biden, that's the problem for the Democrats. Kind of in related news, President of Iran, not the supreme leader, but sort of the supreme leader in waiting, Ebrahim Raisi, I'm not sure how to pronounce his name. He died in either an unfortunate or a happy helicopter crash in the foggy mountains near the Azeri-Iranian border, along with his foreign minister. This, came, I guess, at a bad time for the Iranian regime, which has its own issues. But it came at the same time that world opinion seems to be sort of turning away from Iran's great, the little Satan, Israel, Iran's great regional enemy. The International Criminal Court, the main prosecutor for the International Criminal Court wants to arrest Benjamin Netanyahu and put him in the dock, along, of course, with Yahya Sinwar, the head of Hamas. Biden's team has been colder to Israel than I think basically any president in, certainly in 55 years, maybe. Or maybe since Kissinger. I'm not exactly sure. I don't know. The protests on campuses continue. People seem convinced that Israel, or many people seem convinced that Israel is this genocidal state. I don't know. What do you fellows think of the Mideast situation and what the U.S. role should be?
It's a bad hand. It's really, I'm glad it's not my job, and I feel like I have a pretty coherent grasp on the situation. We know that the Obama administration spent a lot of time trying to peel Iran off from the Asia bloc, or whatever you want to call it. Coming out of the debacles of the George W. Bush administration at the time, there was a hardcore of prominent neoconservative types who did not skip a beat when Bush left office and said, we just need to go straight on to Iran. We gotta bomb Iran. And that seemed to me like a bad idea at the time. I don't think I was very alone in that. And so when Obama took his first term to kind of do not too much of nothing in the Mideast, I think that the reaction was, okay, great. Like, let's take a breath. Let's not overextend ourselves any more than we've already done. And then, in classic Obama fashion, like taking a pause turned into a kind of counterproductive drift. And the drift then turned into like, well, maybe we can actually make these people our friends. And it seemed tremendously naive, even if there was some sort of, 10-dimensional chess logic lurking down there somewhere. I mean, you try to think of someone from the Obama administration who was like a real first-rate geostrategic mind. I don't know. I don't know if there was such a person, and I don't know if to this very day there is such a person who came out of that era. So the Iranians played those people, and they played them good and hard. And now there are, I guess, Iranian spies embedded within the U.S. government. I don't think they managed to purge all those people, even though the news came out that they were supposedly in there somewhere. It's been very embarrassing, and I just, the Bush administration did tremendous harm, but it's certainly not so much that the 2 terms of Obama could be excused for what they did with that mess. They made it worse. It's just been decades of mismanagement at best, and we're paying a heavy price. It's easy to imagine whether it's Tehran or Beijing or Moscow or Pyongyang for that matter. It's just guys just sitting there laughing. I mean, it really has been a humiliation for the U.S. Trump was able to kind of nibble around the edges a little bit. The Abraham Accords or whatever, they came and then they went, and I don't think they were particularly that strong to begin with. So it's going to be a tough road, and my general sense of things is it would be wise to ease, to sort of back away slowly from the whole mess without making any harsh, without making any sudden moves. But you can't disengage completely. My paleocon friends like to think or seem to act as if, you can just say, "Whoa, we went too far. Let's, we'll just turn around. We'll take a strategic retreat about 35 yards back, and those will be our geostrategic defensive lines." And it's really not that easy. It's really rough when you're this kind of global imperium, and you're trying to figure out, where's a nice, comfortable halfway point that we can sort of tighten up our lines. It doesn't really work that way. Look at what has happened to pretty much every empire that found itself in a similar situation. You start trying to tighten up your lines and take a step back, and you can find yourself very quickly in a rout. So it's not great, and it's going to take. Once again, we're reminded, like, statecraft matters, real statesmen matter, and if you don't have them, things can slip out of control very fast indeed.
I am sure I'm going to butcher this citation, but I do keep thinking with some trepidation about Pericles' assertion to the Athenians that it may have been wrong for you to acquire your empire, but it would certainly be dangerous for you to let it go. And I'm reading Steve Saylor right now because this collection of his essays came out about the title is noticing that it's just a sort of series of his work throughout the years, and it's an opportunity to reconsider whether it really was judicious to excise this person's voice from the public conversation. And I don't know, maybe this is spicy. I don't think it is spicy in current year America, but I sort of feel like it was a mistake to cut him out of the discussion. And this is one of his major points, is like he sort of approached Afghanistan and Iraq and Iran not from the perspective of, who's got WMDs or do you like Bush or not, and from the perspective of like Rudyard Kipling and The Man Who Would Be King and these previous works of literature and history from the English Empire. And it pains me to look at America that way, because I am like holding out with every last fiber of my being for the Republican ideal as sort of our shining standard to return to. But I don't think we can ignore the fact that we do functionally have an empire in all but name in these areas because of many sort of failed idealist projects, and also because of all these tacit, you know, supposedly philanthropic projects. And an empire in all but name is almost worse or more dangerous than an empire that acknowledges itself as such, because it's incapable at a philosophical level of learning from the previous history of empire. And it does strike me, I mean, I have absolutely no solutions here. I'm not the kind of person that can think well about geopolitics in a constructive way, but it does strike me that that is the position we find ourselves in.
Yeah, I guess I would fall back on the wisdom of the combined wisdom of a couple of our dearly departed senior fellows, John Marini and Angelo Codavilla. I would just encourage everyone to revisit Angelo's corpus, especially at the Claremont Review of Books, because he's been writing about the war on terror since its inception, and about the intelligence community and about the way we conduct foreign policy these days. So I think the wisdom, Marini's judgment of all of this, and this actually is pretty applicable to Israel's predicament with what to do about Gaza. You know, you have the Biden administration telling them they need a day after plan, and that means our friend, former fellow of Claremont, Daniel Greenfield, wrote, I think, a front page mag piece about this recently, last few days. My father flagged it for me, about, you know, what the Biden administration means is nation building. That's what has to be done now, according to them, in Gaza, which means someone has to pour a bunch more money into it and manage it. That leads me to Marini's claim when he witnessed I'm sorry, I said earlier that John Marini is one of our dearly departed senior fellows. John Marini is still very much with us. Angelo is dearly departed. But John, in observing the Afghanistan withdrawal, his judgment was at one of our fellowships to the fellows was just, you know, the modern way of war has been absorbed into the bureaucratic way of doing government. So we don't really win wars anymore because we're incapable of it. We don't wage and win wars. We manage conflict. And that's what the U.S. is trying to encourage Israel to do, when I think their first inclination would be to win this war quickly. What that says about the Iranian business, I don't know, but I think Angelo's advice would be the first thing you have to do in foreign policy and in diplomacy is, after decades now of mismanagement and failure and embarrassments, is find the opportunities to reform and recultivate fear and respect amongst your enemies. And that would apply to Iran. It would apply to Iran's proxies, Hezbollah. It would apply to Hamas, Gaza. It would apply to, you know, take your pick, reborn ISIS or whatever. So find now what those opportunities are and what the action is to produce them, or to produce the proper fear and respect. You know, it depends on the circumstances, of course, but that's what we should be pursuing. And I think from what we've seen from the intelligence community and the State Department in both Republican and Democratic administrations in recent decades is an incapability of even thinking that way about diplomacy and war. And so finding a way to get that mindset back would be step one. And it means probably revisiting an older way of doing foreign policy. Angelo Codavilla, I once asked him, you know, so what, Angelo, you know, how should we think properly about foreign policy? What's the best thing to read on it? And he said, read John Quincy Adams's diaries, which Angelo had done, of course. So you maybe start with Angelo's book on John Quincy Adams, which I've told this story before, but the Office of Net Assessment at the Defense Department of the Trump administration asked Angelo what an America First foreign policy would look like. And they wanted to write up a serious memo, and Angelo being Angelo, he gave them 4 months later, 65,000 words, basically what would John Quincy Adams do? That's all captured and collected in this great book that Angelo published before he died, America's Rise and Fall Among Nations, Lessons in Statecraft from John Quincy Adams. That would be a good place to start. And so if I were in the Trump administration, I would hand that book out to any prospective or likely to be diplomat or defense official who I could trust and thought was reasonably on my side. Start there. The difficulty is we need to somehow slough off over 100 years of foreign policy thinking that takes as its major premises the fact that really all peoples across the globe desire for liberal democracy, and the task of the American empire now is to help get them there. And the older way of viewing the world, the more moral realist way of viewing the world from the founding would be, you can't fix foreign peoples. You have to take them as they are. You have to understand their regimes and what moves them, what they honor, what drives them, and work with that. And take all of that information, and if they're a true enemy or a likely rival or can do you considerable harm, then take all that information and figure out ways to cultivate fear and respect in them. And then you will avoid more wars than you would otherwise, and it would help guide you in the conduct of the occasional war that you might find yourself in.
Yeah, it does seem like we waste a lot of time telling ourselves, the people of China are restless. They want American-style democracy. The people of Iran are restless. They're hollering for American-style democracy. We just have to wait, and then they'll get there. But it doesn't really happen, does it? In simulacra news, Sam Altman's ChatGPT can't seem to give up its dream of owning Scarlett Johansson's voice. But when she demurred from letting just being their voiceover actress, the AI juggernaut simply dummied up a sound-alike. The whole thing seems like an ironic sub-reference to the film Her, where Scarlett Johansson played a disembodied AI character. Is Sam Altman lost in his own virtual playground, or what? James, what do you think?
If only he was just wandering a maze of his own design. I mean, his reputation is not good. The rumors about him, sort of comments that have been made, I think by his sister, among others, his reputation in Silicon Valley itself. I don't know the heart of Sam Altman, but someone who's trying to assess things from the outside in order to have a reasonable impression of, right track, wrong track. Like, the guy seems to be auditioning for the role of supervillain. He seems to be a sort of classic sociopath and not trustworthy and bent on attaining a kind of power and authority that has eluded the grasp of the greatest of emperors and most feared of despots over the past several thousand odd years. I just don't like the looks of it, and doing something this petty, it's still not clear exactly what went down. And of course, there are these conflicting interpretations. There's a lawsuit, and the lawyers will do what the lawyers do. But I think, between him and Bill Gates and, Microsoft and OpenAI have this sort of weird relationship going on, this weird intimate relationship. The whole thing sucks, and America has to do better than this, or else, just even up until this point, we've seen the line between quote unquote democracy and quote unquote autocracy blur away through the behavior of this administration and the big tech megalomaniacs who are so closely intertwined with the regime. And, gosh, at what point, how much further do we need to be taken down this path before it becomes obvious that our hard fought and hard won constitutionally guaranteed form of government has been shoved to the side and replaced by this kind of Borg thing that we're all being uploaded into? I I do sometimes get tired of uttering the same phrases, but gosh, it's just every day you see it march a little bit further. Sam is bad news, and if it takes America's sweetheart suing him into oblivion to chip away at what he's done, I think that's a win for us all.
Fair enough. I don't really have a lot to say about it. It seemed like kind of a intriguing little twist, life imitating art, or AI imitating art, or AI imitating itself. I'm not sure. Well, this is the part of the hour where we talk about our favorite pieces from the website and encourage our listeners to go to AmericanMind.org and read the damn site. Spencer, let's start with you today. What have you got?
Yeah, I would like to talk about this piece called The Closing of the Internet Mind. It's a co-authored essay. The lead name is Aaron Khariati, whose book on the, shall we say, sort of deep state of the deep state of scientism was pretty influential for me and well worth a read. He's somebody with a lot of experience and expertise in the field of epidemiology and in kind of the world of the hard sciences more generally, but also a stern critic in part through careful reading of mid-century philosophy of our bureaucratic and technocratic regime. Now, along with Debbie Lehrman, Andrew Lowenthal, and Jeffrey Tucker, he's written a really interesting kind of brief history of internet ideologies, sort of from the idealism of the early web, which was often expressly positioned as an alternative to the constricting and suffocating world of rising state power, the military-industrial complex. I mean, even I am old enough to remember the time when the internet was associated with a kind of Wild West, an exciting, almost hyper-libertarian free space where everybody could participate and nobody was under any kind of international or national censorship law. And there's a bunch of great documents from that period here, and it tells the story in some detail of how that ideology gradually was captured and co-opted and transformed into the current sort of managerial omnistate that we now find, in a weird pas de deux with the Biden administration. It's just a really, it's great when somebody makes an argument that you can kind of vaguely sense, but that you couldn't back up with facts and logic and sources. And this is what Khariati and his co-authors have done in The Closing of the Internet Mind. Well worth your time.
Great. James, how about you?
How about me? Always an embarrassment of riches at TAM. Max Eden wrote a little piece called School Choice Revolutionary, and it's about flipping the script on teachers' unions. He's got a nice case study there. I won't spoil it for you. It's going to be a quick read, but I want to flag it because I really do think that we have turned a corner on education. Look a little deeper at what's going on at the state level, below the headlines about campus craziness and below the headlines about administrative bloat and radicalized terminal master's degree people and overeducated millennials who are paying off their student loans, working at Chipotle, and just all kind of the big memes about how messed up education is. Look beyond all the stuff about transing the preschoolers and SEL and whatever. And what you will see is quietly charters and homeschools and alternative, even up to college and university level. It hasn't been super glamorous. It hasn't been earth-shattering at the level of national news, but it is happening. And there are states across the U.S. where there's now, I think, a critical mass of real viable functional alternatives to both the derelict public school system and the radicalized private school system. You might have to move out of your state in order to take advantage, but there really is stuff out there, and it really is getting support, and it hasn't been stomped on by the bad guys yet. So fight nowhere near over. But especially coming out of COVID, I really think we have actually turned a corner, and there is a critical mass of stuff out there. Smarts is in some ways a depreciating asset in this technological age, and at a time when we've flooded the zone with a lot of overeducated people who can't find a job for their 10-dimensional critical theory education or whatever. But some education is definitely a good thing, and especially education surrounded by sane, healthy, high-functioning human beings. And that's becoming, I think that's going to be back in reach for a lot of people who started to worry that it was just too late for their kids.
Yeah, that was a good piece. Ryan, how about you?
I enjoyed the Virtues of Settler Colonialism by Pavlos Papadopoulos, a frequent contributor to the American Mind and an assistant professor of the humanities at a great, though small, institution, Wyoming Catholic College. For those of you with Catholic or not just Catholic students in high school thinking about something off the beaten path, consider Wyoming Catholic. It's a small school out in the Mountain West that teaches good stuff responsibly. And has an outdoor element too. I think the incoming freshmen go backpacking for 10 days as part of their orientation. Anyway, the piece is, it's part of a recent theme in, I don't want to say dissonant right, but kind of heterodox scholarship. I recall, I forget the author, forgive me, you guys can look it up, but In Defense of Colonialism was a recent book. Settler colonialism is this. The thing I like about the piece is that Pavlos gives you a quick tour of this latest fad of the academy that now, like so many other fads, the academy has bled into our public discourse and the public square rather than just be confined to campus. Settler colonialism, of course, is at the center of the left's objection to Israel. And really, it's also an indictment of the United States and the Anglosphere in general that we're settler colonial powers. And Pavlos just makes the point that a more he does that Cook's tour of the academy stuff and how you should understand the term as it's thrown about, and draws an analogy between the woke domestic stuff in America and this phenomenon of disparate impact. That is to say, what our modern civil rights laws have been warped, and our civil rights regime has as at its center this conflict between the oppressor and the oppressed, and the exportation of that sort of concept abroad is what settler colonialism is, or at least as its devotees level it as a charge against the Anglosphere, America, Israel, etc. So it's a good primer on the academic concept, and then it ends with some interesting reflections from Tocqueville and John Adams, among others, about this fact of human migration. Pavlos doesn't quite put it this way, but the great civilizations of the world, I would argue, following Pavlos's implication here, we're all settler colonialists. And it makes a big difference what kind of settler colonialist you are. And he sort of ends with a discussion of the virtues and habits that made the settler colonies or colonialists in America so successful. And we are the beneficiaries of that project in many ways, as much as there's some tragedy mixed in whenever any larger, more advanced civilization displaces another. History is not just a tale of good guys and bad guys. It's much more interesting and complicated, and that's tied up in the habits and virtues of peoples and how they conduct themselves as they spread across the globe, which has been the story of human history. So it's a rich piece, although not too long, and worth your time.
Yeah. For me, I liked a piece by our friend Scott Yenor, who's the Senior Director of State Coalitions. Is that right?
Correct.
Yeah, State Coalitions at the Claremont Institute. He has a piece called Civil Rights Stay Gay. And, he's addressing, again, this issue of disparate impact and a particular twist that it's taken in public health, where researchers looking at negative health outcomes for LGBT Americans and saying, well, this is all a function of homophobia or this is a good term, minority stress, like that there's extra stress involved, and that's why, say, lesbians smoke more. And this all works out to a kind of a reductio ad absurdum, where, like as he says, politicians on the left sell the entire gay agenda as one big suicide prevention program. You have to do this because otherwise you want more young people to kill themselves. So it's sort of, you basically paint yourself into a corner with this kind of logic. But it's a good piece. Civil Rights Stay Gay by Scott Yenner. Well, that's about all the time we have for this week. If you want to know more about what we do, you can go to AmericanMind.org. If you'd like to support our work, you can click the support tab at the top of the page. We deeply appreciate the donations that fund what we do. You can leave a 5-star review for us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Subscribe to the podcast. Spread the good news by tweeting about us, telling your friends, posting our items on social media. We really do appreciate all the support we get. And it's thanks to you and because of you that we do what we do. Thanks to our production crew, Jake Gannon and Logan Zeppieri. And thanks to everyone listening. Until next week.